Richardson, as you know, was arrested in Malibu. She was eventually released, and at that point she disappeared. And to the chagrin of not only the LA County Sheriff's Department, but to all those that know Mitrice, particularly your mother and father, that this became an extraordinarily emotional and charged investigation, of which our hopes were lifted at a point a couple weeks ago when it was reported that she was seen in Las Vegas area, and at my direction we sent extensive amount of resources up to Las Vegas, worked with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, talked to an awful lot of people, got sightings that could have been Mitrice, and then of course Monday of this week we had a report that there were skeletal remains of a human being up in the Malibu area mountains, a couple miles from the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station, of which were discovered by a California Park Ranger in a old marijuana grow. Immediately we went into that area, retrieved those remains with the coroner's office, turned the remains over to the coroner's office. The coroner's office has done an extensive amount of forensic in the last several days, and it's to my sadness and disappointment that I'm reporting to you that it is the confirmed remains of Mitrice Richardson. Life is fragile. The circumstances of this case are tragic. I am mindful of the fact that a mother and father are in deep grieving at this moment, and I will do all I can to assist them in this regard. That is my announcement.
Sheriff Plotkin, could you clarify, please, is it 2 miles from the Lost Hills Station or 20 miles? We've been hearing all kinds of reports. How many miles?
I'm told it's 2 miles.
2 miles, okay.
And Sheriff, we just talked to Mitrice's father before you came in, and he said he had not been officially informed about this until just now when you walked in. How come he was not notified?
I've been just officially informed of this myself about 30 minutes ago. So my point is this, that the coroner's office made contact. I think when Mr. Richardson does go home, he'll find a voice message, and I'm pleased that he's here. I will be with him and his wife and his former wife in this process from this point on. We will talk extensively, whatever help I can provide the family. We do have professional people within the department that can help with the grieving process.
Sheriff, Chief Winter, if you would, it was around 6 in the morning. There was a confirmed sighting in someone's backyard. That was said to be about 5 miles from the Lost Hills Station. Do you believe she went from there to this place she was now found?
The place where she was located by an individual in the backyard of his home was not 5 miles from the sheriff's station. It was less than 2 miles, so I'm not sure if it was even a mile.
Sheriff
here must know.
7.5 miles.
Winter, if you would, for a second on this, we've got the unfortunate confirmation here. Now the question is, what do we have? Do we have a homicide? What have the forensic pathologists been able to tell you about a possible cause of death? When might we see that information? Any idea?
We have no indication of a homicide at this point. I don't believe that the remains are capable of telling us a story that would lead to that possibility. And I would ask that the coroner's office continually work in that regard to see if there was any foul play.
Sheriff, it's real easy to second guess, the easiest thing in the world to do that. But as you look back at that night, do you say, my deputies should have, or did they act properly? Or is this the right time to ask that question?
Well, the deputies acted properly, but the point is that properly doesn't necessarily mean that we didn't do something or could have done something more. I mean, there's always questions that come about in a circumstance like this. Mitrice obviously had some concerns. The fact that she would go to a restaurant, have a dinner, not be able to pay for it, essentially an irate owner or manager of a restaurant says, I want her arrested, conducts a citizen's arrest, we follow the process. The important thing about procedures is that we must always recognize that we can do things differently. And I think that the soul searching in the Sheriff's Department is certainly being done, and I know that the deputies involved certainly feel terrible, as I do, that ultimately a very, very fragile young lady at that point in time is found missing. at a point in time when we all thought we could find her. We couldn't find her, and now we do find her, and I just am very, very disappointed that she's not alive.
But it
So
goes back to
excuse
one
me,
thing that was obvious
when you
that
talk
went
about
wrong that night,
procedures,
something obviously
does
did
that
not
mean
go
that
wrong.
you're gonna look at not
The
letting
procedure
women
itself.
out at midnight after dark now?
Let's just do this, ma'am. If you want, we'll get to you.
Just a quick follow, I mean, in light of what you just said, in looking back at the way the procedure was done that night, I know everything was done by the book, but did somebody drop the ball somewhere in your
Well,
department?
let's do this. There's a grieving process here. We have the unfortunate bearing of the news that this latest discovery of skeletal remains are those of Mitrice Richardson. Let's let the family have their time of grieving. Let's let this lady be buried in dignity, and then let's go forward with the investigation of the Office of Independent Review, which we'll give you copies of, and we'll give you copies to the lady over here. We have nothing to hide in this case. The point is, there's a lot of factors beyond just the Sheriff's Department that need to be explained. But right now, we have a confirmation that a young woman and her remains have been found.
If you say
Are
let
you
there be a
reviewing
grieving
your
process, but
procedures
according
at
to
all?
the father, he was not even notified, and is it proper to notify someone? at a
Let me
news
confirm
conference?
again, am I missing a point here with you?
Yeah, I just
I
wanna know
just get informed a half an hour ago. You expect me to tell the father
Should
immediately?
somebody tell the father
We just
before
did.
before
We
he finds out at a
just
news
did.
conference? At a news conference, is it proper to notify someone
I
of
just
their
spoke
daughter's
to
remains
him,
at a news
and he
conference?
was contacted by me right now. Now, if you object to that, that's your concern.
I'm just asking you, is that proper?
What do you
To
think would
find
be
out about it at a
different
news
in this
conference.
circumstance?
Maybe call him first, notify him first
If
before
you
a news
don't
conference
know
happens.
until 10 minutes ago, who are you going to call? If he's here, I was told he was here when I arrived. I've paid my respects to him and will continue to do so. I don't understand the purpose of your question.
Usually
I've
they
got a
notify
different
family
question,
members
Sheriff.
before they hold a news conference.
I've got a different question, please. Given the circumstances that have been revealed to you about her release, is the Sheriff's Department reviewing their procedures and perhaps looking at cases more closely if there are signs of perhaps mental illness?
I think the most critical procedure that needs to be reviewed and is being discussed is simply that because a restaurant owner or someone who is running an establishment decides to make a citizen's arrest, that the option of that arrest is either to cite the individual in the field or take him to jail. Either one is legitimate and within policy. The question is it an $86 defrauding an innkeeper enough of a crime to take someone to jail? That is the issue. And I think that should be looked upon because the discretion within law enforcement is certainly there. There's more than one way to handle a problem. And I think that that's what we continue to reinforce in the thinking of our deputy sheriffs.
Is there
And the
anything
release-
else that can be done in the way of the release, perhaps to increase the number of people who would examine a person where there's some question of mental instability, additional psychological evaluation? Maybe someone says, hold it, let's hold this person a while, even though technically we could release
Well,
her.
back to my earlier point. Let's get through the grieving process. I'm happy to turn over the Office of Independent Review's review that answers substantially all the questions that you're asking me. This is not the time. We want to stay in focus with the fact that we have to stay in the spirit of the grieving of the family, and that's where I am right now. I will give you every possible answer that you ask, but that has to come at a later time. Thank you very much.
Real quick, can you tell how long she's been there? Will you ever be able to tell and how she got there?
It's very simple. My conclusion, and I think anyone with reasonable investigative experience, and I have the investigators here, would conclude that she was there for a long period of time. And I assume that it was within the sequence of her release time.
You could have walked that far?
I don't know, but I assume that was the case. I don't know.
What were the condition of her remains? I mean, were they intact? Were they?
Well, back to that, let's not get into details of what the cadaver looked like and all these other gory things. The important thing is that we're confirming the remains are those of Mitrice Richardson. Thank you very much.